These mountains have been here longer than memory, longer than maps, longer than anything we built on top of them. And they remember what we've forgotten. Tonight, you're going to hear from rangers who stop patrolling after dark, from officers who don't want to talk about what they found. You're going to hear about people who walked into the woods and never came back. This is over 2 hours of stories from the Appalachian Mountains. Settle in and let the rain carry you.
If you're ever in the Appalachians and you hear your name whispered by a familiar voice, don't answer. Not because the woods are empty, but because something out there might be using that familiar voice to lead you off the trail. Tonight, 3 Appalachian encounters. One that brushes close to the supernatural, and 2 that feel all too human. You decide which is worse. This story comes from a guy named Cole who was working a seasonal ranger job in the Smokies. Cole was out walking a service path deep in the Smokies. The July heat was decreasing because the sun was going down. He was on a logging trail just after a storm. No tourists, no campers. Just a chorus of insects and the low thrum of far-off thunder. On his right, the ridge tilted up, old hardwoods and scattered spruce. On his left, the ground fell away toward a creek, which the other rangers had told him, "We don't go down there after dark." They didn't specify why. They never do. Cole had a radio with him, and he left the microphone on, not because he was expecting trouble. He just logged his notes that way over the microphone. He'd reached a blown-down tree, lifted a wet branch, and heard his name. Not shouted, said, "Cole," as if someone had stood just behind his shoulder. He turned. No one. The sound had this hollow quality, like a voice inside a bottle. He radioed dispatch out of habit. "You got anyone near my position?" And he got static. Then a bored reply, "Negative, Cole." Cole kept moving. Another 20 yards and it came again. This time from up the slope above him. Cole raised his hands up to his mouth to make his voice louder, and he shouted, "If you're off trail and you're hurt, call out to me. I'll find you." He didn't get any answer. Cole swears that the voice used a phrase his grandfather used to say to him when he was little, and his grandfather had been gone for years. That did it. He crossed the trail, climbed toward the voice, and every few steps it would drift behind him again, as if the woods were folding around him. At the top of the rise stood an old, breached fence, and past it, a lip of ground that dropped into a black pocket of trees. Cole had never noticed it. No trail, no markers, just a holler that seemed to eat the last of the daylight. He clicked his headlamp on, and to his utter bewilderment, the beam of light appeared to bend like fog with hands. He called again, "Hello, can I help you?" The reply came from the holler itself, whispering his name. Then something else his grandfather used to say when saying goodbye at the door. "Don't keep them waiting." Then Cole heard a second voice, faint, same timbre, but not right. A syllable stretched way too long, like a copy of a copy. "Cole." Oh. Cole took one step toward the drop, and his headlamp hit stones. Not natural, laid stones. The curve of a forgotten ring, a burial ring, if you believe the older maps. He stepped back. The air felt wet and crowded. His radio popped. Shh. Another voice, barely above static. The voice was repeating his own words from just seconds ago. Hello, I can help you. He stared at his radio. That wasn't possible. Cole backed away from the ring, turned, and walked briskly downhill without looking back. The voice followed him until the grade eased and the creek got loud, whispering his name, soft as a coat sleeve against bark. Then, nothing. Cole said he doesn't know what happened, but he said that he would never go back and walk that trail anywhere near dusk again. And no ranger in that park logged any kind of rescue that night. If that story brushed the other side, the next two feel closer, too close, to the world we live in every day. This next story comes from a fella who was doing a solo overnight camping trip west of Brevard, North Carolina. He had picked a legal spot off a side trail, set up his tent, built a fire, and watched it shrink to glowing orange embers. The forest was very quiet. No one else had signed in for days. Just after midnight, he said he heard footsteps on the trail. Not boots, something softer, like tennis shoes, or maybe even bare feet. He clicked his lamp off and just listened. The steps stopped. Then, from somewhere in the tree line, hey, can you help me? He unzipped his tent halfway. You okay? No answer. Do you need help? The voice came closer, but the steps didn't. Like the speaker moved without moving. Come here, please. He had a whistle. He didn't blow it. Didn't want to escalate if it was some kid messing around. He said, "Stay where you are. I'll come to you." He stepped out of the tent with his light off, came around behind the tree, and waited. Then, the same voice repeated with the exact same tone. "Come here, please." He snapped his lamp on, swept the tree line slowly. No eye shine, no silhouette, just bark and distance. The voice shifted to his left, the same distance, the same tone. "Come here, please." He realized whoever it was pacing him. Wherever he aimed the light, the voice moved just beyond the edge of the light. Well, he said he got angry then, and he shouted, "If you need help, show yourself. If you don't need help, leave." Nothing. So he walked straight toward the voice, 10 yards, 5 yards, and the distance never closed. The words never changed. "Come here, please." Then he backed quickly to his tent, reached inside, grabbed his trekking pole and the bear whistle, and did what a ranger had once told him to do: make it known. 3 sharp blasts. The sound cracked the night completely open. The voice that had been taunting him stopped. Then, from the trail, far enough away to know it was a human throat, a short, ugly laugh. Not loud, just knowing. Of course, the poor guy didn't sleep that night. At first light, he walked to the edge of camp and found shoe prints, a narrow foot with a deep ball, like someone who is a toe walker. The tracks came to the boundary of his campsite, then stopped. No retreat, no side path, just stopped, like whoever it was had been standing there watching him, maybe for who knows how long. He made his way out of there quickly. Back at his car, he noticed mud across the passenger door, about knee-high, then a smear toward the handle. He hadn't parked in the mud. He drove straight to the ranger station. The report, of course, went nowhere. No crime, no witness, just a set of prints that ended where they shouldn't, and a voice that had called to him, taunted him, and harassed him, and really scared him from the dark. One more story, and this one feels like a trap that someone knew how to set and had set more than once. A girl who lived in a small town in the mountains of East Tennessee snuck out one night to meet two of her friends at an old fire tower. The girls used this fire tower like a clubhouse. The two friends were late, so she texted him, "I'm here." She had no bars. She pocketed her phone and listened. At the edge of the clearing near the fire tower, there was a gigantic tulip poplar with a forked trunk. When the wind hit it just right, the hollow where a branch had been torn from the tree made a note, like blowing in the neck of a bottle. The kids called it the calling tree. She leaned there on the calling tree, waiting. That's when a voice on the far side of the ridge called her name perfectly. But none of her friends talked that way, and this was a male voice. She stepped away from the poplar and called back. The reply came from the opposite direction. "Emily!" Down by the old fire road. She didn't think that voice was either of her friends. "Emily!" She pulled her phone out and tried to text her friends again. Still, no bars. She circled the clearing once and found twine tied low between two saplings, about the height of a shin. She lifted it from the leaf litter and saw 10 can tabs clipped along it every yard or so. If you ran through it in the dark, you'd go down hard, and whoever said it would hear you. She thought of a story her uncle told her about poachers using sound lines to track game at night. She didn't like how that thought felt, so she headed back toward the tower where the moonlit ground was clean. Her name came again, closer now, from below the ladder. She aimed her phone light and saw nothing, but she heard the faintest click, like a phone camera, much too close to her feet. She climbed 2 rungs and stopped. From the calling tree, the hollow moaned, as if answering the voice. Then, from the old fire road, a second voice, male, whispered her name and someone else's. One of the girls who was supposed to meet her. That's when she realized whoever this was messing with her knew not only her name, but her friend's name as well. She pulled back against the beam of the fire tower. Her heart was beating loud enough to feel it in her teeth. And she did what her dad had drilled into her. Get elevation, get light, and get loud. She climbed halfway up the tower, hit the brightest phone setting she had, and said, steadily as she could, "I've called my dad. He's 5 minutes out." She hadn't called her dad because she didn't have any bars. But someone down there shifted when she said it. The leaves whispered. Minutes later, though she said it felt like an hour, 2 headlights came crawling up along the old fire road and pinned the brush in high beams. She recognized the sheriff's car. She saw someone get out of the car with a bright flashlight and swing it side to side. She saw glints in the undergrowth, bottle glass, and maybe a camera lens. The deputy walked over to the tower, climbed up beside Emily, said nothing for a long time. Then he radioed in a quiet voice, "We'll need another unit." They found the twine that Emily had discovered and 2 more lines that she hadn't, one waist high, one just above the knee, set to catch someone fleeing the first. They found boot prints circling the clearing and a name scratched into the tower leg. Her friend's name, Megan. Fresh, the wood still pale from the carving. Emily's friends, it turned out, had never left their houses. They told her later that they never received her texts. Whoever was stalking her up there already knew who the girls were. The deputy, a friend of her dad's, told her dad later, not in front of her, that he'd seen versions of this before. Sound traps and calling names used to pull kids off trails, make them run where you want them. The deputy said the reports never make the news. But that tower did come down a month later. Maybe the voices out there aren't calling you out. Maybe they're calling you back to a place you can't return from. Some of them speak like the people we've loved and lost. Some of them don't speak like people at all. And some just need you to take a few more steps. If you have ever heard your name called in the dark in the Appalachian Mountains, if a voice paced your light and never showed a face, I would love to hear about it. Please tell me in the comments below.
Rangers see things out there they don't put in reports, but they are not the only ones. Law enforcement across these mountains have their own files that stay locked. 3 officers decided to talk.
They tell you that the woods are peaceful. They tell you that there's nothing out there but bears and bobcats. But ask any ranger who's worked the night shift in the Appalachians, and if they've had a few drinks, they'll tell you something different. There are files that don't make it into the official database, calls that get logged as animal disturbance or something like that, because the real description would end a career overnight. Tonight, we are going to open 3 such files. A routine patrol that turned into a hunt for something that mimics human speech. A no-go zone where the radios just stop working. And a raid on a meth lab where the squad found something waiting for them that wasn't quite human. Welcome to Paranormal, etc. Lock your doors and get your flashlight. Our first account comes from a former deputy in rural Virginia. We'll call him Deputy Miller. I've been on the force for 6 years. I don't scare easy. You see a lot of bad stuff in this job. Car wrecks, domestic violence. But this was different. It was 2 a.m. I was parked off Route 60, just sitting in my squad car doing paperwork. Total silence. Then I heard it. A whistle. Not a bird whistle. A human whistle. Clear as day. It was doing that little tune. Shaving a haircut. You know that tune? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I rolled down the window. Figured it was some drunk kid, and I yelled out, "Sheriff's Department, identify yourself." Silence. Then, from the tree line, maybe 20 yards in, I heard it again. But it wasn't a whistle this time. It was my voice. My voice. It repeated what I just said. "Sheriff's Department, identify yourself." But it didn't sound like a recording. It sounded wet. Like whatever was saying it had too much saliva in its mouth. And it didn't get the inflection right. It sounded flat. Dead almost. I shone my spotlight into the brush. Nothing but trees. Then the whistling started again. But it was coming from behind my car. I didn't investigate. I didn't get out. I just threw it in drive and I got the hell out of there. I checked my dash cam footage later. The audio was corrupted, just static. But I know what the hell I heard. Our second account comes from a patrol deputy in eastern Kentucky. We'll call him Deputy Harris. Every department has one stretch of road they warn the rookies about. For Harris, it was a place the locals called the Bottoms. Officially, it's just an old country road that dead ends at the river. Unofficially, it's where calls go to die. They told me on day 1, if you get a call down in the Bottoms, you don't go alone. And if it's a hang-up, you clear it over the phone and you move on. I figured it was just hazing. I mean, come on. Ghost stories and boogeymen? Right. First time I got a call out there was a 911 hang-up. Came in around 11:30 p.m. Dispatch tried to call back. No answer. The system tagged it Phase 2. So we had a location. End of Old Mill Road. Right smack in the middle of the Bottoms. I keyed up, told dispatch I'd head that way. Soon as I turned off the highway onto that road, the radio got real quiet. Not just the radio, everything. No crickets, no frogs, middle of summer, and it sounded like somebody put the whole valley on mute. I did a radio check. Just a habit. Unit 12, en route to Old Mill Road. How copy? Nothing. No squawk, no static, just dead. I told myself it was a dead spot. I kept driving. The road dropped down into this holler, trees hanging over like a tunnel. Then I saw it, red glow at the end of the road. For a second, I thought it was taillights. I rolled up, slow, and realized it wasn't taillights. It was the reflection from my own light bar hitting a stop sign. Only, there's no stop sign on Old Mill Road. It's a dead end. I pulled to a stop, killed the engine so I could listen. Still nothing. Just that thick, heavy quiet. Then my radio crackled. I grabbed the mic. "Dispatch, this is 12. I'm not hearing you. Say again." What came back over the radio was my own voice. "Dispatch, this is 12. I'm not hearing you. Say again." But it wasn't a reply. The timing was off by half a second, and it sounded wrong. Like it was coming through a mouthful of gravel. The words were right, but the rhythm was broken. I put the mic down. I didn't key it. I just sat there. Then, clear as day, I hear, right over that speaker, "Unit 12, step out of the vehicle." Except for dispatch, never calls me Unit 12. They use my call sign, and the voice, it tried to sound just like our dispatcher, but it was missing something. No accent, just breath, just flat. I looked at the dash. The radio wasn't even showing a transmit light. It was dead, but I was hearing a voice. I decided to back out. I dropped that cruiser in reverse, checked my mirrors, and that's when I saw someone in the camera. Just a shape, standing in the road behind me, right in the glow of my reverse lights. Tall, thin, arms hanging real low. I spun around to look, and there was nothing there. When I looked back at the camera, the feed was just black, like someone turned it off. The voice came over the radio again. This time it used my first name. "Bill, step out of the vehicle." I never told dispatch my first name, not on the air. We don't do that, ever. I slammed it in the drive and I got the hell out of there. No code, no lights, just hammer down. They pulled the logs later. There's no record of the 911 hang-up, no call logged for Old Mill Road that night. But when I checked my in-car computer, the address was still in my history. So, I don't answer calls to the bottoms anymore. I'll take the ride up. Some places, they can stay off the books. Our final file isn't a lone deputy on some dark road. It's a full team operation. A raid on a suspected meth lab in an abandoned farmhouse up in the hills. On paper, it was a straightforward hit and clear. In reality, it ended with missing time, corrupted footage, and a team that refused to go back. We'll call the team leader Sergeant Cole. We'd been watching that property for a week. Old farmhouse, end of a dirt road. Intel said the cook was moving weight through the county. Armed guards, maybe dogs. We had the county units blocking the road. My team was 6 deep, plus a canine. Night raid, no lights, standard stuff. We breached the front door. Inside, it felt wrong. I've cleared a lot of structures in my career. This one, the air was heavy, humid, like a basement after a flood. But this was the main floor. No suspects, no dogs, no noise, just the sound of our own boots. We quickly moved room to room. Kitchen was first. Counters were wiped clean, but the drain had this residue. Dark, thick. It clung to the metal like black oil. One of my guys, Romeo, pointed out scratch marks on the back door. Deep gouges in the wood. I figured dog, a big dog, but the spacing was off. Claws were too far apart for a dog. That's when the lights went out. Whole house went black. We were already running night vision, but the second the power cut out, my nods started to glitch. Little white streaks across the image, static at the corners. Then I heard something in the hallway behind us. Not footsteps, more like something heavy brushing along the wall, dragging itself. I turned, brought my rifle up. Hallway! We pivoted. The sound stopped. Romeo whispered, "Sarge, my cam just froze." His feed on my wrist display was locked on one image. Then it jumped ahead like 5 seconds. We're just gone. We pushed toward the sound. The air got colder. My breath started fogging inside my mask. In August. We hit the back room. Floor was covered in plastic sheeting, not laid out nice, bunched up, like something had thrashed on it. There were drag marks, long, parallel grooves through the plastic and into the wood underneath. Whatever made them, it wasn't walking on two legs. I heard the canine behind me whine. That dog had taken down armed suspects, no problem. That night, he was trying to crawl backward through the handler's legs. Then in my ear, I heard command. "Shh, Cole, your heart rate just spiked. Status check." Except my biometrics weren't patched to command yet. We were running a training config. They shouldn't have that feed. I keyed up. "Say again, command. You don't have my vitals." What came back wasn't command. It was my own voice. "Say again, command. You don't have my vitals." But drawn out, slower, like something was trying on the words for size. I called for fallback. We're done, back out, back out." We started to move toward the front. That's when Romeo screamed. He was at the rear of the stack. I spun around. He was on the floor, sliding backward like someone had grabbed his leg and yanked. There was nothing on him. Just empty air and him clawing at the floor. We grabbed his vest, hauled him back into the kitchen. His boot looked wrong. The leather was crushed and twisted, like something had bitten down on it without teeth, just pressure. That's when we bailed. Full retreat. Later, we pulled footage. Every single body cam had gaps. Not full black, just skipped spots. 10, 15 seconds, missing here and there. The worst part? On one of the cams, for about 3 frames, less than a blink, you can see something in the hallway behind us. It's tall, wrong proportions, arms too long, and the eyes, they're not reflecting the night vision. They're lit from the inside. Our official report says it's bad intel, empty house, training injury to Romeo. We signed it, we moved on. But my team won't take operations in that part of the country anymore. Whatever was in that house, if it wasn't cooking meth, it was using the lab as bait.
You know, the law keeps its distance from certain hollers around here. And there are communities that keep their distance from everything.
There's a place where the mist clings to the trees like a silent warning, where hikers vanish without a trace, where locals whisper of things best left alone. This is the Great Smoky Mountains. And something or someone is out there living off the grid, watching, waiting, and thriving where no one should be able to. Long before roads and trails crossed these mountains, the Cherokee lived here for thousands of years. They called this land Shakanaji, the place of blue smoke. They respected the land, but they also feared it. Their oral traditions spoke of areas where people simply vanished, of sounds in the night that were not animals and were not man, of things that they saw that walked like men but were not men. Certain ridges and hollers were avoided entirely. Even today, some Cherokee elders warn, don't follow the crying into the woods. During the vicious Civil War, the Appalachian region, and particularly the Smokies, were in utter chaos. Both Confederate and Union deserters fled into the Smokies to escape death or justice. Some say they grouped up in abandoned hollers. They formed rogue settlements, and there they survived on roots, stolen supplies, wild game and fish, whatever they could get. Records from the 1860s have a mention of bands of mountain men, and these bands of mountain men were reported to attack supply routes. But then, after that report, no further word. No mention of arrests, no follow-up on the status of these guys, nothing. They simply disappeared deeper into the Smokies. So, could they have married, raised families? And what would those families look like after living over 150 years in complete isolation, cut off from the rest of the world? There are many, many alleged eyewitness accounts from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park of some very odd things. Here are just a few of them. Multiple visitors have reported seeing figures in the distance that looked human but were moving way too fast to be human. And they said that they would drop down on all fours and scurry into the undergrowth. An account from 1999 from a hiker near Tremont described that he saw a naked ash-gray man. He said the man ran up a steep slope and he moved like a lizard. I guess he dropped down on all fours and scurried right up the slope at a super high rate of speed. Another account, campers in Elkmont reported to rangers that they had heard chattering. They said it sounded like people mimicking speech outside their tent. They said this went on all night long. They kept checking outside the tent and no one was there. That's a little unnerving. Here's an account from a bow hunter in 2007. He claims to have snapped a photo of what he thought was a bear until he zoomed in. He said whatever it was had long limbs, zero fur, and forward-facing eyes. And this poor guy got so freaked out, he never went back to that area to hunt again. I doubt he ever hunted again. That's not something you want to see. One of the most circulated and well-known stories about the Great Smokies came from an alleged former park ranger, and this guy posted this story to Reddit in 2016. He said there were areas where his superiors told he and the other rangers they were not to patrol alone at all. He said they would find odd stacked rock patterns near some of the disappearance locations. I guess little stones stacked up, one on top of another is what he's talking about. He also described a particular case where he and a partner had found a white Jeep abandoned at a remote trailhead. He didn't say which trailhead. I guess the person never turned up. They did find a Jeep. 3 days later, a trail cam deep in the backcountry, that means off trail, away from where hikers are, recorded something moving. The still image showed a pale figure crawling on all fours. It had very long limbs, human-like, and the creature's eyes reflected light, eye shine, like an animal. Typically, you won't see eye shine with a person, this ranger said. Cades Cove is one of the most visited areas in the Great Smokies. It's one of the most beautiful places. It's a picturesque area, a big open valley. There's a motor loop that goes all the way around it. Really quite a place. A lot of preserved homesteads in there. Really something. But it's also where disappearances have occurred and where visitors have reported seeing some very strange things. So I have a couple of stories about things in and around Cades Cove. First off, this story goes back to 1991. A couple was camping off a trail, and they said that they heard a baby crying out in the woods all night long. So they checked with the ranger the next day. The ranger told them there was no one within 5 miles of their campsite, according to the sign-in sheet that he had. Then, later on in 2003, a hunter is said to have found an old shack torn apart from the inside. He said there was wood splintered everywhere. No claw marks like a bear, no blood like something had been torn apart in there. Just a shredded sleeping bag, and beside the sleeping bag was a half-eaten deer leg. So that's something. Then there's the woman of the ridge. This is a scream that is heard in and around Cades Cove. Sounds like a woman screaming. The locals gave her the name Woman of the Ridge. I don't know what that thing is screaming. It doesn't sound like a woman to me. It sounds more like a banshee. Very creepy. Another place in the Great Smokies Park with a lot of strange goings on is a place called Deep Gap. Now, Deep Gap is a quiet place. Really much too quiet of a place, some would say. So here's a few stories about Deep Gap. Seems there was a solo hiker who had signed in with the Rangers, went in there sometime in 2008, I'm not sure what month, and this guy vanished, gone. Rangers, when he was supposed to sign out, they called the search and rescue folks because they had seen neither hide nor hair of this guy. Search and rescue teams went out. They found nothing. Not a trace, not a piece of clothing, no blood, not a thing. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, some campers who were camping a few ridges over from that location where this guy disappeared, they reported that they heard long, human-like screams at around 2 a.m. So they must have slept really good that night. They were brave enough the next morning to get up and search around where they thought the screams were coming from. What they found was a set of footprints, no shoes, sunk deep into the mud, headed up a hill, and they said up at the top of that hill there was nothing in particular there, and then the tracks just trailed off. So that's interesting. Another witness claimed he saw a woman who was crawling fast on all fours like a spider. And he said she darted between 2 trees, turned around and stared at him for a while, and he said that her eyes blinked. So it seems that missing persons reports in the Great Smokies National Park follow some very interesting patterns. These are very similar to the patterns we first heard about from Dave Paulides, author of Missing 411. If you haven't read those books, I suggest you do. However, they are really pretty scary. So here's what the search and rescue folks that have searched in the Smokies had to say. They say that often the missing person is reported to have gone off the trail very briefly, and then the rest of the group notices that they have just vanished. Also, the trained dogs, often bloodhounds, lose the trail almost instantly. Very unusual. Another thing, the search and rescue teams will grid an area, then suddenly move 5 miles away based on new information. This happened in the Dennis Martin case, if you're familiar with that. So again, this is what Dave Paulides in his Missing 411 research pointed out, that these search and rescue teams jump for some reason to a distant location. And several of the cases are marked closed, even though there's no resolution to the case. And the families are often told to just stop asking questions. Just stop. So with no resolution, they're encouraged to stop. I don't think that sounds very nice. So, what's really going on in the Great Smoky Mountains? What's happening with all these strange sights and sounds, disappearances, all this bizarre things that's going on? So there's a number of theories that various folks have. We'll go over some of those, although this is certainly not a complete list. It could be any number of other things, which we could get into at a later time, but here's just a few. So some believe that what's going on is that feral people who are the descendants of Civil War deserters or people who escaped the Great Depression, maybe World War II, World War I deserters out living in the woods, their descendants. That's what we're seeing as the feral people. Also, it could be a sort of a squatter type situation where these folks, maybe in small groups, have simply checked out of modern living in a city or somewhere else, and they're out there just living free, maybe stealing things from campers as needed or as available. Who knows? Who knows what could be going on as far as the feral people? There is a lot of evidence for feral people, and that is, I think, a pretty interesting and pretty likely scenario. So other folks who are sort of in the cryptid camp believe that all these sightings are basically can be chalked up to one or another species of cryptid, like a Sasquatch or a dogman, or maybe even some sort of relic hominid that has survived for untold millennia undetected, and it just happens to make its living in various places like national parks. Then within folklorish type circles, there's a lot of talk about other types of creatures. For one, which I think is a pretty terrifying creature, the rake. The rake is a very gaunt, pale, humanoid-looking critter that sort of crawls on all fours, and it's glowing eyes, and some people claim they've captured on trail cams images of these things, and they're also rumored to be extremely hostile. So that doesn't sound like anybody you want to meet. A few folks go even further, and they talk about things like interdimensional entities that can come through portals and take people at will and then simply go back through the portal. There's also talk of old world spirits that are trapped between realms. I guess this would be in the arena of elementals from Ireland and Scotland, if you're familiar with those. But maybe the simplest and the scariest explanation is they're just people, feral people. And these feral people who chose to leave civilization behind generations ago, now they simply see anyone else that they can single out and get alone as prey. Another good question to ask is this: if these things are occurring, and if there are unknown creatures of various types in the Smokies and other national parks, why the silence? Well, here's one reason, one possibility. Tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park has over 14 million visitors a year. It is the most visited national park. So, missing people, strange creatures, man, that's bad for business. The park rangers are discouraged from discussing unconfirmed sightings, and I can tell you that is 100% true. I know that personally. And there's the trail cam footage that often goes missing from the trail cams that the park rangers put out. The case files, they're closed without an official explanation. And then there's the silence, which may not be accidental. So the next time you go for a hike in the Smoky Mountains, here's what to do. Number 1, stay on the trail. Number 2, don't chase voices, especially if you hear those voices calling your name and they sound like someone you may know. Don't investigate stacked stones in areas where you know there's not been anyone around for a while. And if you feel or see something watching you from the woods, keep walking. The feral people are still out there, watching, waiting. And the Smokies aren't the only place you can find feral people. The Ozarks have their secrets too.
The deeper you go, the stranger it gets. The next 3 stories come from the rangers that patrol these mountains for a living. I've been a park ranger for north of 20 years. I've tracked bears, I've pulled hikers off cliffs, and I've seen things that the biology textbooks say don't exist. You think the woods are peaceful? Try being 5 miles deep in the backcountry when the birds suddenly stop singing. Try finding a campsite where the fire is still warm, but the people are just gone. Tonight, I'm going to tell you 3 stories. And I'm only telling you because I need to get them off my chest before I go back to work on Monday. Lou, can I swear you to secrecy? It all started simply enough. I was a rookie. I heard a legend about a phantom ranger. We used to joke about him in the break room. Rookie hazing, mostly, until I drew the short straw for a ridge patrol that would finish way after dusk. I saw him about 50 yards up the trail. Green uniform, perfectly pressed, campaign hat, perfect posture. I radioed dispatch to see who was poaching my sector. The dispatcher's words hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought it was more rookie hazing. She said, "Negative, Unit 4. You are solo in that sector." Those words floored me. I was thinking to myself, okay, funny guy. I jogged to catch up, but he moved. Wrong. He wasn't stepping over roots. He was gliding smoothly, like he was on a conveyor belt. I yelled out, "Hey!" He stopped, dead still, and he turned around. Under that hat, it was just smooth skin, like a thumb, no eyes, no mouth. I blinked, and the trail was empty. No footprints, no snapped twigs, just me, and the feeling that I wasn't the big bad ranger anymore. I was the prey. Now, Lou, you told me before that you like to go on these ghost hunts. Let me tell you something, buddy. I got used to ghosts. Wasn't no big deal. It's the things with teeth that bother me. You know the Red River Gorge? You've heard of it? You been there? A beautiful place. But the locals stay away from the natural bridge after dark. There was a report a few years back, a girl named Jakey and her friends. These girls got all brave and went on a night hike. That was real stupid. They were near the top when they heard it. Skin hitting rock, wet, heavy. They shined their lights down the trail and saw it. Crouched, naked, pale white skin that almost glowed in the LED beams of their lights. It had limbs that were just too long, with too many joints. It was looking past them initially, but when Jakey screamed, it snapped its head up. Black pits for eyes, no nose, just holes. It didn't roar. It scuttled like a spider. It was about the size of a man, elbows high, knees bent backward. The girls ran. Good God, they ran. They could hear it behind them. Click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. Claws on the sandstone. They made it to the parking lot. The only thing that saved them was the street lamp. Jakey said it stopped right at the edge of that sodium light. They stood up on 2 legs and just watched them fumble with their keys, waiting for the bulb to burn out. Yeah, I took the report, interviewed each one of the girls separately. Their stories jived up with each other. It was a hell of a thing. Yeah, Lou, that's bad. But you want to know why I'm drinking tonight? It's the search and rescue call from last damn month. It was a cold case. This guy had been missing almost 20-something years. Me and Carl, we got in that new F-350 and we took that son of a bitch back deep in them logging roads, miles from anywhere. Suddenly, that piece of crap died. Not a stall, dead. The damn battery was fine. I checked it myself. All the electronics, I checked. Brand new truck. We had to get out, hike in that damn place. We found the site we were looking for. Then we found a mandible. Then we found the skull that I think went with that mandible. Then we found clothes rotten into the ground. But here's the thing. We'd clear a grid, turn around, damn if there wasn't a rib sitting there. Clear another grid, damn if there wasn't a femur sitting there. I'm not kidding you, Lou. Them bones were sitting right on top of the leaves we had just walked over just seconds ago. Like someone or some damn thing placed them there after we walked by, toying with us, and I damn sure didn't appreciate it. Now, we marked our exit path with orange flagging tape. Seemed like miles of that shit. When we tried to leave, tape was gone. Every bit of it gone. I'm not kidding you, Lou. It was removed. So, me and Carl, we had to camp. I couldn't sleep till I took first watch. The next morning, I woke up to kick the fire, and sitting right in the center of that burned out ash, a bundle of twigs tied together with grass, like a little creepy ass doll. Carl was still asleep. I was wide awake. I was pretty damn freaked out. Who in the world put this here? Of course, the official report that we filed says equipment failure and animal predation. But that's horseshit. Lou, I know what I saw. The woods aren't empty. So do me a favor, Lou. If you hear your name called from the tree line, don't answer. And for God's sake, don't look back. Some places in these mountains don't just have stories, they have reputations. The kind that locals won't talk about after dark. These stories are real.
There's an old saying around here, the mountains don't keep secrets, they keep scars. They remember every battle, every betrayal, every body buried in unmarked graves. The peaks of the Great Smoky Mountains are some of the oldest on Earth, and that much time gives the land a long, deep memory. So, what if the things that died in the Smokies simply never left? Picture this. The last light of day surrenders to the Blue Ridge. Fog, heavy as a shroud, is peeling itself off the blacktop of the Cades Cove Loop. Miles away, a single flickering lantern keeps a lonely vigil outside the old Greenbrier establishment, a light for a guest who is never, ever going home. And in the dead center of a forgotten cemetery, a cold blue ball of light hovers silently above a grave that hasn't seen a flower in over a century. These aren't just campfire tales to spook the tourists. These are wounds, open wounds that refuse to close. Tonight, we're not just telling stories, we're walking into them. We're visiting 3 spots the locals still won't go alone. 3 places where the past is so present you can feel it on your skin. We're looking for the bride who never became a wife, for cemetery lights that have no earthly source, and for a cave where, according to every old story, the devil himself holds court. Come on, let's go. First stop, the Greenbrier Restaurant in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Before it was a high-end steakhouse, it was the Greenbrier Lodge, built in 1939. It was a secluded haven for wealthy hunters and vacationers, tucked away in the woods just outside of Gatlinburg. It was a place of laughter, of roaring fires, of bourbon-poured meat. And in the spring of that first year, it was the place where a young woman named Lydia Jane Watkins was preparing for the happiest day of her life. The story, as it's been pieced together, is a classic tragedy. June 12, 1939. Church bells rang at noon. The humid air was thick with the scent of gardenias, and Lydia Jane Watkins was left standing completely alone in an empty chapel. Her intended, a young man from Gatlinburg, never arrived. Legend says she didn't cry, she didn't scream. She simply turned and ran the 4 miles back to the Greenbrier, the same building that houses the restaurant today. Still in the wedding dress she spent months sewing by hand, she went straight to the bridal suite on the 2nd floor, locked the door, and with a piece of rope, hung herself from the rafters. The staff that work there now, they don't like to talk about it. They just say the details get fuzzy, as if forgetting is a survival skill. But the building won't let them forget. The evidence refuses to be forgotten. The beam she used is still there, now situated directly above the restaurant's bar. Some say that Lydia's story has a darker postscript. That days after her death, her fiancé's body was found in the woods, mauled by a mountain lion, an animal that hadn't been seen around there for years, leading to whispers that Lydia's avenging spirit had hunted him down. The reported encounters with Lydia are constant, woven into the very fabric of the building. A bartender, let's call him Alex, is locking up around 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. The restaurant is silent. Every chair is on its table. He does a final check of the security monitors in the office. On the screen for the main hallway, he sees it. Clear as day, a woman in a long white lace gown gliding past the lens. His heart seizes. He sprints to the hallway, flipping on the lights. It's empty. The footage shows her passing, but 3 seconds later, the hall is empty. There are no side doors, no closets. She just dissolves. In what was once cabin 3, now a private dining room, a guest celebrating an anniversary feels a sudden, intense chill. His wife excuses herself to the restroom. While he's alone, he hears the unmistakable sound of a shower turning on full blast in the adjoining suite, which has been locked and empty all night. The only key to that room is on a hook in the manager's office downstairs. And every year on the anniversary of her death, the kitchen vents exhale the distinct sweet smell of gardenia perfume, even though the flower hasn't been stocked or used in the restaurant for decades. I had the chance to eat there last fall. The place has an atmosphere, no doubt. Around 10 o'clock, as the dinner service is winding down, a jukebox that hasn't been plugged in since the last remodel crackled to life. It didn't play a full song. It just played a single mournful verse of Billie Holiday's "I'll Be Seeing You." The same song, I later learned, the wedding band had practiced the morning Lydia died. The sound was thin, warped, like it was coming from a long, long way away. When I asked the manager if this crew was playing a prank, he stopped polishing the glass and gave me a dead-eyed look. Sure, You find the extension cord for a 1955 Seabird with no power supply and we'll talk about it, he said. Next stop, Cade's Cove, to see some glowing orbs. In the daylight, Cade's Cove is a postcard from the past. You'll see deer grazing in fields of goldenrod, split-rail fences tracing the memories of old homesteads, and children running around the 11-mile loop. But when the sun bleeds out behind the peaks and the valley is plunged into an almost prehistoric darkness, it remembers what it truly is, a basin of haunted history. For many decades, park rangers and campers have reported the same impossible phenomenon. Park rangers field multiple calls yearly from people who see floating candle flames or corpse lights bobbing above the tombstones of the primitive Baptist cemetery. They're described as cold, blue-white lights, hovering about 3 feet from the ground. They hold perfectly still, an unwavering pinpoint in the oppressive dark. Until you take a single step toward them, then they're just gone, vanished without a sound. The blame for this lingering energy is laid at the feet of two major tragedies that tore the cove apart. First, the Civil War. Cade's Cove was fiercely pro-Union, a pocket full of abolitionist sentiment in a Confederate state. This made them a frequent target for raids. In 1864, Confederate raiders dragged 3 men suspected of being Union sympathizers to the fence of the primitive Baptist cemetery and executed them. Their bodies were buried in haste, their graves never marked. Then, in the 1930s, came the second great trauma, the creation of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The government, through the process of eminent domain, began evicting the families who had lived in the cove for generations. It was a bitter, heartbreaking process. Some refused to leave, barns were burned, shots were fired, and families were forced from the only home they had ever known. John Oliver, a lifelong resident, fought the eviction in court for years until the family finally lost. I went in the cove after hours, with permission, and set up a full-spectrum digital camera and a digital temperature probe near the old cemetery. The silence out there is a physical weight. At 1:03 a.m., the temperature plunged 7 degrees in 30 seconds. My breath plumed in the cold air, and then a light ignited. It was hovering directly over the headstone of William Tipton, a patriarch of the cove from the late 1800s. It wasn't a flicker. It was a slow, deliberate pulse, like a weak heartbeat once, twice. Then it faded, leaving an afterimage burned into my retinas. Then there was no wind, only the smell of damp earth, wet wool, and the faint, unmistakable scent of old gunpowder. The lights appear most often in late October, right around the anniversary of the final evictions. Call it foxfire, swamp gas, a coincidence. I did too, until a cold orb of light drifted so close I felt the static of it raise the hairs on my arm, and the word coincidence became meaningless, foolish even. Now, let's go over to the Devil's Courthouse and Whiteside Mountain. There are some places on this earth that just feel wrong. They are dissonant, out of time with the rest of the world. The Devil's Courthouse, a jagged, snarling rock formation along the Blue Ridge Parkway, is one of those places. Long before the settlers arrived, the Cherokee knew this place was different. They called it Datsig Nagud Yi, which translates to the place where they judged. They spoke of a slant-eyed giant named Sukalu, a powerful being, who used a cave within the mountain to hold court. When settlers came, they misheard the stories, took one look at the menacing cliff that looks like a demonic throne, and decided the devil himself must hold court inside. The name stuck, the Devil's Courthouse. It doesn't help that the mountain has a habit of collecting people. The terrain is notoriously treacherous. climbers report sudden, inexplicable 60-mile-an-hour downdrafts that leap from the mouth of the main cave, throwing ropes and gear sideways into the abyss. The National Weather Service has no official explanation on file for these localized, violent downgusts. The most chilling story happened in 1978. Two college students, both experienced hikers, camped below the summit. It was a clear, cold night. At around 3:12 a.m., one of them managed to get to a payphone in the nearby town of Cashers, North Carolina. He called his mother, sobbing, incoherent, screaming about something with horns standing on the trail ahead of them. The line went dead. A massive search and rescue operation was launched. They found their campsite perfectly undisturbed. The tent was zipped, sleeping bags inside. The car was locked at the trailhead, but the boys were simply erased, vanished without a trace. The Park Service officially listed them as lost, presumed dead. The locals, however, have a simpler and more terrifying explanation. The devil collected his due. So we visited 3 places, 3 wounds on the landscape that refuse to scar over. At Greenbrier, Lydia is still wearing a wedding dress, forever walking the halls and trailing the scent of perfume and a promise broken. Cades Cove continues to hold a silent, mournful vigil for the executed and the evicted, one cold blue light at a time. And the Devil's Courthouse, the door to the cave is always open, and the ancient judge, whatever you choose to call him, is waiting for the next name to enter his ledger. These mountains are beautiful, breathtaking in the light of day, but in the darkness here is ancient, and it belongs to something else. Please leave me a comment with the place you want me to find next. And please, for your own sake, don't hike alone after dark. The trails down here have a nasty habit of forgetting to lead back.
Ah, good. You're still here. These next 3 stories are so disturbing. I didn't want to record them.
In the Appalachian Mountains, the woods come with rules. Rules your grandparents don't explain. They just expect you to follow. Don't whistle. Don't answer your name. And if you see someone you know standing in the trees, no, you didn't. Tonight's first story is about the summer a boy in rural Kentucky found out why these rules exist. He was 11 when he moved to Kentucky with his dad. They stayed with his granny in what locals call a holler, a narrow bowl carved into the hills. Family lived up and down both sides of the road, but directly across from their house, nothing. Just woods. Thick, dark, untouched woods. His granny had rules, strict ones. Never mess with wild animals. Never go into the woods alone. Never whistle, especially after dark. If you hear your name called from the tree line, you ignore it. You do not go toward it. And if you see someone in the woods you think you know, no, you didn't. You turn around and you get home. At 11, he thought it was just backwoods paranoia, hillbilly stranger danger. He had no idea how wrong he was. That August, he and his dad had a little campsite about a quarter mile from the house. They'd mowed a path through the tall grass and the blackberry briars to get there. Close enough to check in on Granny, far enough to feel like they were on an adventure. They camped there all the time. It was their spot, safe, familiar, and comfortable. Until one night, it wasn't. They were by the fire when his dad decided to head back to the house. Said he needed more beer and he wanted to check on Granny. He told his son, "Don't you mess with the fire. I'll be back in a bit." The boy watched his dad's flashlight bop up the path, and then he was alone. That's when the woods went wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was emptied. No crickets, no frogs, no wind in the leaves. Even the little stream that usually roared beside the road sounded like it had been moved miles away. The world felt hollow, like something was holding its breath. Then he tasted it, that sharp, awful, metallic tang in the back of his throat, like burnt metal or like blood on a hot penny. It came out of nowhere. His stomach rolled. A few minutes later, his dad came back down the path, visibly irritated. He said he could smell metal burning halfway here and wanted to know what his kid had thrown in the fire. Beer cans, aluminum foil? But the boy hadn't touched the fire. He pointed to the flames. No trash, no cans, no aluminum foil, nothing but wood and coals. His dad frowned. He was unsettled in a way he didn't want to show the boy. His dad said, "There's a storm coming in. We better head back to the house." They left the tent and started down the path toward the holler. He picked up a slice of watermelon to eat on the walk. Just another summer night in Kentucky, until the sky lit up. In woods this dense, lightning does something unnatural. It turns the world into noonday brightness in a heartbeat. Every branch and every leaf lit up. Then it hits in the front row of trees, and anything beyond that, pure, absolute blackness. He was mid-step when the first bolt cracked. For a split second, he saw the yard, the road, the stream, and a dark shape at the far edge of the first line of trees. A silhouette, tall and wrong. Then darkness slammed back down. He blinked, his heart racing. He told himself he imagined it. They walked a few more steps. Another lightning flash. This time, the shadow wasn't across the yard. It was at the first line of trees, closer and clearer. Its head was too big, its body too long. But the details were gone long before his brain could catch up. Darkness again. Thunder rumbling so hard he felt it in his ribs. Then the third strike came. Lightning blew the world open, and now the figure was standing in the middle of the road, just there, between them and the house. He's tried for over 20 years to describe what he saw in that flash, but the words always fall short. Its head wasn't the right size for its body. Its arms hung too long, bending at angles that looked almost tentative. The torso was just off, like somebody tried to sketch a human from memory, having only ever heard what a human looked like, never having seen one, like a blind imitation. It was wrong in a way your brain doesn't want to process, like it hurt just to look at it. As soon as the dark slammed back in, he didn't wait, didn't watch it move. didn't see if it stepped closer. He just ran. He sprinted for that porch, burst into the house, heart pounding in his ears. His granny was at the sink, arms in soapy water. He told her, breathlessly, "I think I saw something, Granny." She didn't ask what. Didn't tell him he was imagining things, didn't laugh. Instead, she dropped the dish, wiped her hands on her apron, and said to his dad in a voice that left no room for argument, "Shut and lock every window and every door now." His dad, drunk enough to argue on most nights, didn't say a word. He just obeyed. That night, the boy slept on the floor next to his granny's bed. Granny never asked him what he saw, and he never asked why she believed him without hearing it. The next day, morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight in the holler, birds back in the trees. But when they walked out to the campsite, the tent door was ripped away. Not slashed, not chewed, not clawed, just ripped away. Ripped off in one strong, brutal motion, like somebody grabbed it with both hands and pulled. Up further in the holler, his uncle found all 8 of his chickens dead. Their heads were missing, not a drop of blood anywhere. For the next 3 weeks, every kid in the holler had to wait for the school bus with an adult. His dad was late for work every single morning, standing guard at the bus stop. Anytime he tried to bring up what he'd seen, the grown-ups changed the subject, shut it down, walked out of the room. As a kid, he figured they just didn't believe him. Years later, he realized the truth. He was in his 20s at a Halloween party, telling his cousins the story like a campfire tale. Halfway through his story, his aunt snapped. Her face went hard. She pointed to him and said, "Don't you tell them that. Don't you put evil on them." The room went quiet. That's when it clicked. All those years of being cut off, talked over, shushed, they weren't doubting him. They were trying to keep the story and the thing in it away from him. Because there is a name for what he saw that night. A name his aunt used once when she thought he wasn't listening. The same name people all across Appalachia whisper when they talk about tall, wrong things standing to the edge of the trees. The Goat Man. Ellie told y'all our family's rules, but she didn't tell you where they came from. I learned them the hard way. In a place they call the Bennington Triangle. Some folks call it the Zone of Death. I just call it the place that took my friends. I was 16 that summer. Thought I knew the woods better than anybody. My friends Pauline and Arnetta were with me. They knew the trails, but not the truths that walked beside them, not the rules. I was so sure my knowledge would protect us. I was wrong. That morning, I packed what my grandma told me to bring: compass, a map, food for a week, a tent, water, clothes, and a warm sleeping bag. But more important were the things that Pauline laughed at. A pouch of salt to circle our camp with, ash to keep away the barefooted ones that stalked the trees after sunset, a red string tied around my waist to confuse the triangle's pull, iron filings to weigh down the soul where the veil wears thin. Donetta agreed to carry a pouch just like mine. I tied a red string round her waist too. But Pauline, oh, she just rolled her eyes. She said it was woo-woo crap. That arrogance cost her. Our hike that day started out peaceful. Birds singing, wind playing in the leaves, sunlight dancing along the path like it was leading us on. Then it changed. The light dimmed. No clouds in the sky, but the woods got darker somehow. A cold mist bled across the trail ahead of us. And then the sound just died. No birds, no wind, no insects, no nothing. My stomach dropped. Rule number 1. If the birds stop singing, close your eyes and count backward from 13. Do not open them again until you hear a chickadee. We had stepped into a thin place, a fault line in the skin of the world. I hissed, "Close your eyes now. Don't open them till I say." Donetta's eyes widened, confused but trusting. She obeyed. Pauline, she just laughed. "Seriously? Another one of your creepy old rules?" I closed my eyes anyway, started counting. 13, 12, 11. A shiver came right down my spine. Something was there, moving, heavy, slow, wrong. The air around me, it bent, like the space was making room for it. 10, 9, 8. The footsteps got closer. Bare feet, wet. Not behind me, not beside me. Right where Pauline had been standing. 7, 6. She gasped. A sharp, strangled sound. Not fear, surprise. Then she screamed, short, cut off like somebody grabbed the sound out of her throat. 3, 2, 1. Just as I hit 1, the buds came back, all at once, like somebody pressed play on a recording. I opened my eyes. Donetta was crouched on the trail, clutching the red string at her waist like it was the only thing keeping her here. But Pauline was gone. No tracks, no broken branches, no sign of a struggle. Just a very faint disturbance in the mist, like something impossibly large had brushed through and taken her with it. "Where is she?" Donetta shouted, looking all around. "I think she was taken," I heard myself say. "Pauline!" Donetta bolted off the trail into the brush. "Don't leave the trail!" I yelled. But it was too late. Panic flared in my chest. I chased after her. The mist thickened around us, unnatural and heavy. The world turned into a blur of ghost gray fog and shadowy trees. Roots grabbed at my ankles, branches clawed at my arms. Everything smelled damp and old, like soil that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. By the time we stumbled to a stop, the sun was bleeding out behind the trees. The trail was gone. We're not finding her in the dark, I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. We'll camp here. First light, we try to find the trail and get help. Donetta nodded, eyes hollow, shock settling in. She didn't argue with me. We pitched our tent in complete silence. I laid a heavy ring of salt around our camp, whispering the old words my grandma taught me. Not prayers, more like warnings, barriers, a fence made of stories and belief. Donetta wandered off to relieve herself. I waited, glancing at the darkening trees. Every shape seemed to breathe, to shift, and to watch. That's when I heard the whistle. Sharp, piercing, and not far off. Hey Geraldine, where are you? I can't see you. Donetta's voice rang out, sounding panicked. Follow my voice, I called, stepping just outside the salt ring without thinking. I cupped my hands, let out a sharp whistle back to her. The sound hadn't even finished leaving my lips when my blood ran cold. From the trees to my left came a low, guttural growl, deep enough that I felt it vibrate in my bones. Just then, the forest went still. Even the fire seemed to lean in the opposite direction. Rule number 2, never whistle after dark. It summons it. Just then, Donetta stumbled out of the dark, crashing into me, breathless. Thank God, she gasped. Quiet, I whispered. Inside the circle, now. We scrambled back over the salt. It was too late. The growl, it grew louder, closer, and heavier. Then I saw them. 2 red eyes hovering above the forest floor, higher than any normal animal's eyes should be. Them eyes blinked once, then they moved toward us. Twigs popped, branches snapped under its weight. Whatever it was, it knew exactly where we were. It stepped into the edge of the firelight. At first, it looked like a dog, but it was wrong. Too tall, too long in the body. Black, matted fur, jaws full of uneven, jagged teeth. It moved with the patience of something that knew we had nowhere left to run. The Hound of Glastonbury, I whispered. Grandma had told stories of it. The guardian of the triangle, the enforcer of the rules, and we had broken one. My hands were shaking as I dug through my pack, trying to remember every scrap of folklore I'd ever heard. Rules tied to the hound. If you call it, you pay it. The only thing that I had that might count as payment was jerky. I flung a piece past the salt ring. It snatched it up with unnatural speed, fangs flashing in the firelight. But it didn't retreat. Instead, that hound kept suckling. pacing us beyond the salt, watching, testing. Its growls deepened, the sound curling like a voice trying to form words in a throat that was not made to speak words. We stayed awake all night, backs pressed against each other, eyes burning, fire never allowed to die, salt circle unbroken. Them eyes did not leave until dawn. We waited until the sun was high enough in the sky to burn away the fog. Even then, our hands were trembling as we smothered out the fire. Every rustle in the woods made us jump. Every twig snap sent a pulse of panic right through us. The whole way out, we didn't speak. We just moved. Quick, focused. My compass spun more than just once. The needle was a twitching like it didn't know where north went anymore. But eventually, the trail appeared ahead of us, like it had been hiding from us. We didn't cry with relief, didn't shout for help. We just walked faster because we knew better. Voices in the triangle don't always come from the things that you think they come from. It was mid-afternoon when we heard it. A whisper, soft and deliberate, sliding between the trees like smoke. Donetta! Geraldine! We froze. It sounded exactly like her. Pauline! Donetta called. Pauline, is that you? Donetta! The voice came again. Closer now, from right behind us. From the corner of my eye, I saw it. Tall, impossibly tall. Limbs bent like branches, antlers like rotten wood shooting out from its head. Its face was a void, blacker than shadow, hungrier than silence. It was not Pauline. It was the Watcher. Rule number 3. Don't look up when the wind whispers your name from behind a tree or in the mist. He is watching. At that moment, I grabbed Donetta's arm and I screamed, "Run!" We bolted down that trail, breath ragged, feet slamming that dirt. Behind us, twigs snapped in perfect time with our steps. Bushes rustled as if something kept pace, never quite showing itself. Donetta! The third whisper came right behind us. I turned just for a second. Donetta was gone. There had been no scream, no scramble, no flailing hands. She was just gone. Only the trail ahead of me and the wind in the trees remained. I didn't stop, didn't call her name, didn't look back. I knew what came next. Grandma's last resort rule. If it's chosen you but hasn't reached you yet, burn what's marked your path. confuse it, hide from it. I burned my boots and left them at a fork in the trail, a decoy scent. I ran until my legs gave completely out, crawled under a tangle of roots, smeared myself with wet, cold mud to mask my skin, my sweat. It watched me. I could feel it. I didn't look, not once. Forest rangers found me 3 days later, barefoot, bruised, and wild-eyed. The rangers said that I had just gotten lost and delirious from dehydration and from exposure. Then they launched a search for Pauline and Donetta. They brought in dogs, volunteers, tracking teams. They never found them. And even if they did, it wouldn't be them anymore. Because in the triangle, the forest doesn't just take people, it replaces them. I still live near these woods. Foolish, maybe, but this land, it's been in my family for generations. I know its rules. I follow them, every single one of them. Sometimes, though, at night, I hear them. Geraldine. Their voices are perfect, exactly like they sounded when we were 16 years old. But I never answer. I never step off the porch. I never go into the trees. Because I know it's not them. Not anymore. And if I answer, it might remember that I'm still here. The Great Smoky Mountains are beautiful, but beauty is not the only thing that lives up here. Many people worry about bears. Some worry about getting lost. But if you're really unlucky, it's not what you see in the trees that'll get you. It's what you see on the ground. He had rented a cabin on a high ridge up in the Smokies. Secluded, quiet. No neighbors close enough to hear him scream. It got boring real fast. So he started hiking every day, deep into the woods. He had spotted elk, and he hoped to see a bear. He was not prepared for what he actually found. About 12 minutes into one hike, he heard rustling in the leaves behind him. He stopped, turned around, waiting, hoping he'd catch sight of a bear moving through the underbrush. Nothing. No animal, no movement. Just a few dead leaves settling. He shrugged, chalked it up to the wind, kept going. Another 10 minutes passed. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Not heavy enough for a person, not soft enough for a deer, not the 4-beat pattern of an elk, just wrong. He turned again. The trail behind him was completely empty. Just trees and brush. No one was there. He told himself it had to be a woodpecker, some echo some harmless noise. But he started paying more attention. He was in a clearer part of the forest now. Fewer trees, sunlight breaking through in wide patches. That's when he saw it. At his feet, just behind him, a shadow. Not his shadow, not the shadow of a tree, not some simple shape cast by a branch. This shadow was concentrated, darker than it should have been, like a stain of pure black on the forest floor. Not a defined shape, just a large, disfigured blot of darkness. He spun around, expecting to see something standing there. Nothing. He looked down. The shadow was still there. He wasn't standing in it. It wasn't attached to him. It just was. He walked away quickly, heart rate picking up. After a few yards, he glanced back. The shadow was gone, completely vanished, as if someone lifted it off the ground. He tried to shake it off, told himself he was just tired, that he was seeing things. Then he noticed poison ivy on the trail and started watching the ground more carefully to avoid stepping in it. That's when it came back. The same shadow, same unnatural darkness. Only this time, it appeared several yards behind him, right in the middle of the path he'd just walked. Appeared. It didn't slide in, didn't grow from a corner. It was just suddenly there. He stopped, stared. His skin crawled. He started walking faster. The shadow vanished again. For a moment, he let himself breathe. Then he saw it, appearing again. This time, off to his right. It advanced several feet in a heartbeat, like a dark spill that somehow moved. He was surrounded by normal shadows, branches, tree trunks, leaves, but only this one moved. He stopped. The shadow stopped. He took a small step forward. The shadow slid the same distance toward him. He stepped backward. It followed. Before you go thinking it was his own shadow, the sun was high in the sky, and this thing was not attached to him at all. It could appear far away from him, off at an angle where his shadow couldn't possibly fall. His shadow chose where it wanted to be. He swallowed hard, took a step toward it just to see. The shadow didn't vanish this time. It moved toward him. He kept going until it was only a few feet away. A big, warped blot of midnight on the ground in a patch of direct sunlight. He just stared at it. It just sat there and stared back. The forest around him felt like it was holding its breath. Then something hit him. With zero warning, he was flung backward. His feet literally left the ground. His back slammed into a tree hard enough to knock the air out of him. Pain exploded down his spine. Before he could stand, he felt blows, like fists slamming into him hard, over and over, but there was nothing there. Then came the claws. He felt sharp, burning lines scratch across his arms, his chest, his shoulders. He threw his hands up to protect his face and felt the sting of something slicing across his skin. He couldn't see a thing touching him, but the pain was real. He was being attacked by something invisible, something anchored to that shadow. Then, out of nowhere, a raccoon waddled out of the brush near the path. It turned its head toward him, then toward the ground where the shadow sat. Every single hair on its body was puffed out. It froze. Head dropped low, body flattened to the earth in submission. Not to him, to it, the shadow. And in that moment, whatever was attacking him stopped. The blows ceased. The claws withdrew. The shadow shot off into the trees like an ink stain being yanked away. The raccoon bolted in the opposite direction, running like its life depended on it, because it probably did. He staggered to his feet, arms burning, body aching. Blood trickled down both forearms from long, angry scratches. He didn't look back, didn't stop, didn't try to understand. He just ran. Branches cut his face, his lungs burned, his legs shook. But he didn't slow down until his cabin came into view. He slammed the door, locked every window, checked each window twice. Then he headed straight for the shower, hands shaking as he turned the water on. Hot water ran red as it washed over his scratched arms. He watched the diluted blood spiral down the drain. He stayed there until the water started to cool, trying to calm down, trying to convince himself there had to be some logical explanation. When he finally stepped out of the shower, he grabbed a towel, wiped steam from the mirror, and froze. The scratches were all gone. Skin that should have been raw and raised was smooth. No scabs, no cuts, no bruises, nothing. Like it had never happened. But he remembered the impact, the pain, the terror on that poor raccoon's face. Something had hit him. Something had clawed him. And whatever it was, it left no mark that the world could see. He didn't call the police. What would he say? I was attacked by a shadow? There were no wounds to show, no proof, no evidence. Just him, alone in a cabin on a mountain with the feeling that something was out there. Now it knew exactly where he was. He never went hiking again on that trip. He didn't even walk far from the cabin. And if you ever come up to the Great Smokies near Pigeon Forge, if you ever decide to take a nice, peaceful, solo hike, pay real close attention to your shadow. Make sure that it moves when you move, stops when you stop, and stays where physics says it should stay. Because out here in the mountains, there might be another one, and it's not yours.
You know, people vanish in these mountains, not lost, not wandering, just gone. The Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,000 miles through some of the most isolated wilderness in North America.
Have you ever felt it? The moment where the trees go too quiet, when the birds just stop, when even the wind holds its breath. I was only a few miles from the next shelter. I had enough food, enough water, but something was wrong. The sun was still up, but the shadows, they moved like they had a mind of their own. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement between the pines, and then nothing, not a sound, not a branch, only that feeling that I was being watched, and whatever it wasn't human. Case number 1, Trini Gibson. October 8th, 1976. Trini Gibson, age 16, was on a school field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains with 40 classmates. She was last seen walking just a few steps ahead of her classmates on the trail to Andrews Bald. One moment, she was visible. The next moment, she was gone. She didn't scream. No one heard a thing. Trained dogs tracked down her scent from the trail to a nearby parking lot. Then the scent vanished. Some investigators believe she may have entered a car willingly, or she may have been abducted, but no one saw any strangers or vehicles in the area. Her belongings were left untouched. No ransom note, no signs of a struggle. Her family insisted that Trini was not the type to run away. To this day, there's no closure, only silence. Case number 2, Dennis Martin. June 14th, 1969, Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 6-year-old Dennis Martin was camping with his father, grandfather, and his older brother. While the children played a prank by hiding from the adults, Dennis ran into the woods wearing a bright red t-shirt. He was never seen again. Within hours, a massive search began. Over 1,400 people, including park rangers, volunteers, the FBI, and the Green Berets, scoured the terrain. Yet, not a single shred of clothing or trace of Dennis was ever found. The official story claimed he likely succumbed to the elements, but oddities in the case remained chilling. One family reported hearing an unearthly scream echo through the forest shortly after Dennis's disappearance. Another claimed they saw a figure, either a man or a bear, carrying something red slung over its shoulder near Rowan's Creek. That sighting occurred just hours after Dennis disappeared. Stranger still, the Green Berets who participated in the search kept separate from the other teams. According to some accounts, they refused to share information and operated under classified instructions. No trace of Dennis Martin was ever found, not even a red t-shirt. Case number 3, Derek Joseph Luking. On March 17, 2012, Derek Luking, age 24, checked into a hotel in Cherokee, North Carolina. The next morning, he left without checking out. His car was found parked at Cleanman's Dome, which is only a short drive from Cherokee. Inside the vehicle, his backpack, his tent, food, water, and survival gear. On the seat lay a copy of AWOL on the Appalachian Trail, and a note that read, "Don't try to follow me." Despite what sounded like a suicide note, there was no body, and Derek's family said he was in good spirits just days earlier. Rescue teams, helicopters, and canine units combed the mountainous terrain. No tracks, no signs of wildlife attack, no remains, not a trace. Some hikers believe he may have intended to disappear. Others think that something else got to him first. Case number 4, Christopher Tompkins. On January 25th, 2002, Christopher Tompkins was walking a survey line in Georgia. He was with a crew of co-workers, spaced about 50 feet apart. They said he was there one moment, then nothing. He was gone. They looked all around and they found he had vanished. On a barbed wire fence near the tree line, they found one of his boots hanging oddly, as if it had been yanked off. Nearby, a few scattered coins, some threads of cloth, and that's all they found. There were no signs of struggle, no signs he walked away. Later on, search teams and bloodhounds combed the area, and they found no trace of Christopher in any direction. His case was filed by the Sheriff's Department under unexplained disappearance. Case number 5, Eric Cheeks. He was just 19 years old. Eric Grant. Spud Cheeks, quite a nickname, Spud. A local from Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Wasn't an out-of-state trendy hiker or a survivalist. He knew the woods. He'd grown up in the woods. He often was out walking in the woods. But in April of 2000, he walked into the woods and never came back. Eric had been seen at a local party. Some say he left on foot alone, planning to take a short walk. But when he didn't return home the next day, his family knew something was terribly wrong. They searched. Flyers went up, and days turned to weeks. Then silence. It wasn't until a full year later, in April of 2001, that a hiker stumbled on something just off the Appalachian Trail near the junction of Route 9 in West Virginia. Roughly 300 feet off the path, hidden in dense undergrowth, were human skeletal remains. The bones were badly decomposed, but a wallet, a pager, a driver's license, a credit card, and a necklace had survived. They all confirmed the identity: Eric Cheeks. No trauma was immediately visible, no knife wound, no bullet wound, but there was no clear cause of death. Law enforcement deemed the death suspicious, yet they never charged anyone. And while there were rumors, whispers about people at that party, names never spoken out loud, nothing stuck. Eric's body was laid to rest, but his story wasn't. To this day, the Appalachian Trail near Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, carries with it the quiet weight of mystery. The mystery of a young man who should have come home, but instead became part of the forest. Case number 6, Paul Parr. It started like any other section hike. On Wednesday, June 4th, 2014, Paul Parr pulled into the parking lot at a popular Appalachian Trail outfitter called Mountain Crossings Outfitters, very close to Neal Gap along the Appalachian Trail. He spoke with a lady employee there and he asked her if she would watch his vehicle while he hit the trail. He said he'd be gone around 6 months and he gave her $200 to watch his car. Then Paul walked off into the woods. At first, nothing seemed strange or out of the ordinary until a few days later, on Sunday, June 8th, his backpack was found abandoned, full of gear and full of cash, north of Neal Gap. No one had seen him, or so it seemed. Then the reports started flooding in. Hikers along the trail recalled strange encounters. A man with no gear, walking in flip-flops and only a t-shirt and shorts, and he was sleeping in a trash bag. He was reportedly offered food and supplies, but refused. He spoke obsessively about religion, sometimes wandering off the trail to sleep beneath the bushes. Trail journals nicknamed him Trash Bag. Sightings were logged as far north as Standing Indian Shelter in North Carolina, almost 30 miles up the trail. Each time he looked thinner, more disoriented, but still moving, and always alone. Search efforts were launched after the sighting stopped, but Paul Parr was never seen again. No remains, no confirmed belongings, just those final eerie sightings, and a story that still makes hikers uneasy when they pass through that stretch of trail. To this day, no one knows why he shed his gear, or why he took off alone, or what happened after he slipped beyond the reach of kindness and into the silence of the mountains. Case number 7, Mike Herron, 2008. Unlike the others, Mike Herron wasn't a hiker and he wasn't hiking. He lived near Happy Valley, Tennessee. His house was not far from a spur trail that joins the Appalachian Trail. One summer morning, he told his wife he was going to go mow some grass. They had a lot of grass. The wife went off to do some errands, and when she came back hours later, the mower was out. Mike's truck was parked. Mike's ATV was running, but Mike was gone. Search teams combed the woods and the trails. This area is known for steep hollers and deep, tangled thickets of rhododendron and other bushes. And Mike was an experienced outdoorsman and hunter. He wouldn't just wander off. This case has led some to speculate whether Mike had stumbled upon something or someone he wasn't supposed to see. Case number 8, Pauline, Polly, Melton. It was a crisp afternoon on September 25th, 1981. In the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, 58-year-old Pauline Melton, known affectionately by her friends as Polly, was hiking the familiar Deep Creek Trail, very near Bryson City, North Carolina, with 2 longtime friends. They had done this walk dozens and dozens of times. It wasn't rugged terrain, just a steady forest path lined with golden leaves. Polly had recently lost a significant amount of weight, and the walk was meant to help with her health. She did suffer from high blood pressure. At around 4 p.m., she picked up her pace ahead of her companions. She rounded a bend in the trail and never came back. Her friends reached the spot where they'd last seen her just minutes earlier, but Polly was gone. There were no signs of a struggle, no calls for help, no screams. Polly had simply vanished, less than 100 yards ahead of them. The search effort began that same evening and expanded very quickly. Rangers, search and rescue dogs, and volunteers canvassed the trail and the surrounding woods. Helicopters scanned from above, but no footprints, no scent trail, no discarded items, no blood, no signs of predation, nothing was ever found. Her purse and identification were back at her campsite. There was no record of her leaving the park, yet some believed that she may have staged her own disappearance, pointing to rumors that she had seemed distracted and possibly distressed in the days leading up to the hike. But there's no evidence that she ever left the trail or the forest. To this day, no trace of Polly Melton has ever been recovered, no clues, no remains, no closure. She simply walked into the Smokies and faded into the trees. Case number 9, William Bradford Bishop, Jr. He was a polished diplomat, a Yale graduate, and a Foreign Service officer, fluent in multiple languages, intellectual, calm, yet, in the spring of 1976, something inside him snapped. On the evening of March 1st, just after work in Foggy Bottom, Washington, D.C., William Bradford Jr. withdrew a few $100s, bought a gas can, a shovel, and, without a trace, returned home. By nightfall, his wife, his mother, and 3 young sons, aged 4 to 14, were all murdered. But then he did something chilling. He loaded their bodies into his station wagon and drove 275 miles south to North Carolina. He burned them and he buried them. Just 2 weeks later, on March 18th, rangers in the Great Smoky Mountains discovered Bishop's abandoned 1974 station wagon parked in Elkmont, Tennessee, just off the Appalachian Trail. Inside, dog biscuits, a shotgun, a bloody tarp, and an axe, all handy items, but no Bishop. Bloodhounds tracked his scent to a nearby cabin and onto the trail, then lost the scent entirely on the Appalachian Trail. It was as if he had melted into the forest, and apparently he did. Despite decades of manhunts, age-progressed sketches, international sightings, and a spot on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted, Bishop was never caught. He may still be hiding in plain sight. To this day, hikers passing through Elkmont, knowing his car sat there and the terrible things he did, say it's impossible not to wonder, what if he's still walking in these woods? Case number 10, Paula Jean Weldon. In the late afternoon of December 1st, 1946, 18-year-old college student Paula Jean Weldon left Bennington College in Vermont. She was headed out for a short walk, not expecting the cold night to come so fast. Wearing a red parka, jeans, and some light sneakers, she hitchhiked down Route 9, and a local man dropped her off roughly 2 miles from the entrance to Glastonbury Mountains Long Trail just before 3 p.m. And I should add that back in those days, hitchhiking wasn't the same as it is today. A lot of people did it, although I wouldn't recommend it then or now. But anyway, shortly after, she was seen by a hiker who asked her how far the trail went. Paula pointed north, and she said it stretched all the way to Canada. It was nearly 4 p.m. Darkness and snow were approaching, but Paula Weldon walked on into the woods, and she vanished. Over the next days, hundreds of students, soldiers, firefighters and local police scoured the long trail and its ridgelines. Despite this massive effort, which included airplanes, dogs, ground crews, not a trace of poor Paula was ever found. No footprints in the snow turned up overnight. No belongings discovered. No signs of predation. Not even her watch or her wallet. Investigators at the time wondered, did she get lost? Did she freeze to death? Or was there foul play? Some theories emerged. Here are a few of those theories. A local logger said he might have seen her the day before, but his stories changed over time. Suspicious sightings in Massachusetts of a woman that matched Paula's description came through. There was speculation of suicide, accentuated by the ominous temperature drop, so she could have gone out and intentionally frozen herself to death. She did leave behind her paycheck and all personal items, so that's a possibility. But no body was ever found. So Paula's disappearance was so mystifying. It happened in broad daylight with witnesses nearby. It was so strange that Vermont's governor actually acted on it. Within months, he formed the Vermont State Police, and they were headquartered at Paula's Mission in Action College. Within a short period of time, 6 other people vanished in the same area in the late 1940s and early 1950s, earning the area the ominous nickname the Bennington Triangle. But Paula Weldon was the first and remains the most haunted disappearance of the Bennington Triangle. The woods around Glastonbury whisper her name. Some believe she walked into the snow, never to be seen again. But until proof is found, Paula remains missing, her last footsteps echoing down the long trail, fading into legend. And Long Trail is now part of the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is one of the longest trails in the entire world. It stretches over 2,200 miles. It crosses some of the most beautiful and most unforgiving land in North America. For most, it's a journey of peace and discovery. But for these 10 people, and a lot of others, the trail seems to have swallowed them whole. Some believe it was nature that took them. Others suspect it was something darker, something unknown, perhaps something known. But out there, past the tree line, past the last marker, something waits, and it's been waiting out there for a very long time.